This is an ODB Films production. Visit odbfilms.com today.
In Latin, Renovo means to renew, restore, or revive. This show is all about growing in our understanding and practice of faith. Past episodes are available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I'm Doug Tuke, the Director of Ministry, now the Vice President of Ministry Advancement at ODB Films, and today we look at a great topic, Jerusalem. How about that? What is this city? Why is it so important? Where did the conflict come from? And why should Christians even give a hoot about our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters in Jerusalem, and what is going on in this city, and the Christian impact on this incredible city? So that's the show, and I'm excited about it because we partner with an organization called Pathfinders, amazing group. The incredible Tim Molnar is sort of our liaison with Pathfinders about arranging and orchestrating pilgrimages to Jerusalem. In fact, Eric Roth, the executive producer of ODB Films, the president, the CEO, he was just in the Holy Land screening Paul the Apostle of Christ to Bethlehem College, and unbelievable experience. And we want everyone to get to see the Holy Land. So we've partnered with an organization that can help you do that. I'll tell you more about them at the end of the podcast. But listen, Jerusalem, this is a big deal. You need to know. You need to know why this city is so important. Okay, the name Jerusalem, Al-Quds in Arabic, it represents the very heart of three world religions, a holy place for Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Yet it's also, and you know this, it's a dangerous flashpoint to one of the world's most like headstrong conflicts, which is kind of the Palestine-Israel issue. Okay, so Jerusalem is Islam's third holiest site and home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Muslims worldwide faced this mosque in prayer before the direction was changed to the mosque in Makkah or Mecca. It also holds the Dome of the Rock, where the Prophet Muhammad ascended on his night journey to heaven. So that's where these significant places are. The Al-Haram Al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary, as it's also called, is held by Jews and Muslims alike to be the place where the Prophet Abraham was prevented from sacrificing his son Ismail, or Isaac to us Christians and Jews, by God's intervention. These are really important. So let's get into some history, why this matters. Why is this all so significant? So for a lot of people throughout history, Jerusalem's been this kind of prized possession. It's been fought over. Archaeological work in the area suggests that the city was actually inhabited as far back as 4000 BC. How incredible is that? So its earliest known name by Jebusite, the translation of a Canaanite town. Okay, that's what the oldest name given to Jerusalem is Jebusite. So together with the later arriving Philistines, they're believed to be the earliest known ancestors to the present day Palestinians. That's kind of amazing. Okay, Philistinians settled along the stretch of the Mediterranean coast that extended approximately from Jaffa to the Gaza Strip and was within the land of Canaan for many centuries. So having left this indelible mark, that the land of Philistia, or Palestine as it's become known, has remained to this day. Okay, so in 1000 BC, the Israelite king David, he invades Jerusalem and walled and fortified the city against further invasion. Now later, when King Solomon built the temple, Jerusalem became a spiritual capital, first for the Jews and later for Christians and Muslims too, like we talked about briefly. So in 586 BC, it fell to the Babylonians and their temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, but later rebuilt. Alexander the Great also captured the whole palace, all of it, in 332 BC. And then in the subsequent years, the Egyptian Ptolemies and Syrian Seleucids also ruled Jerusalem. It just keeps changing hands, right? Now, towards the approach of the first century, the city was the ruling capital of the Maccabean Empire of Simon Maccabee, right? Read Maccabees, it's in your Bible, before giving way to the long rule of the Romans. And this is the part where most Christians kind of pick up on the significance of Jerusalem, but you got to understand that backstory. Now, during the Roman era, the town of Bethlehem near Jerusalem witnessed the birth of Jesus Christ, a prophet in Islam, and in the Christian belief, of course, the Son of God, right? Jesus preached the importance of worshiping one God in the towns of Nazareth and Galilee where he lived. The reason I'm saying that to you is because it's significant, because it's a shift of faith, okay? It's a shift of faith, but it's born out of the same area, okay? But it would be in Jerusalem where he was tried by the Roman official Pontius Pilate, because of blasphemy as a rebel, a false prophet, right? So the sentence he received was death, and Christians believe that of course, that we believe that he was crucified, and the act becomes the central pillar of Christianity. And this is what draws our affection for Jerusalem. It becomes the place where our Savior died. So it's the holiest site in Christendom, really because of the cross, this central figure. Now, Christian followers, of course, flocked to the site in pilgrimage, and a church, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, was built around it. So biblical Palestine became a holy land for Christians because of the cross. Now, after Jerusalem was conquered by the Romans, it became the capital of the Herod dynasty that ruled under the direction of Rome. So in AD 70, the Roman Emperor Titus destroyed the temple to punish and to discourage the Jews who had rebelled against his rule. In 135 AD, the Roman Emperor Hadrian rebuilt the city, giving its new walls, officially naming the land as Palestine, while renaming Jerusalem as Aelia Capitolina in honor of his pagan god, Jupiter. Now, from AD 313, the widespread acceptance of Christianity by Rome, Jerusalem underwent another revival, greatly aided by St. Helena, mother of Emperor Constantine. I live in Helena, Montana. I was married in St. Helena Cathedral. Kind of a cool thing. She sponsored a lot of rebuilding of the city. And in the early 4th century, this is when the understanding of pilgrimage really started to grow. In fact, it became the center for Christian pilgrimage, okay? Because St. Helena, she was all over. We got to know our roots. By AD 638, with this rapid spread of a new religion in the region, Islam, the city was captured by an army led by Abu Ubaidah. Yeah, I said that right. Ubaidah, under the caliphate of Umar al-Khattab, and Islam came to Palestine. So that was when Islam really entered into that space as a formal religion, 638. Now, ever since the time of Muhammad, Muslims have considered Jerusalem to be an important place for pilgrimage, after Mecca, of course, due to its religious significance as being the place of the prophet's miraculous journey to heaven. That's a big deal to note. This is where all of our conflict and tension is really rooted, okay? Now, between 688 and 691, the Dome of the Rock Mosque was constructed by al-Walib al-Malik. And 2 years later, the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on the same site, commemorating the place of the prophet's prayers. Now, this is important. The two mosques and their surroundings became known as Al-Haram al-Sharif, and it became the third holiest site for Muslims. Significant cultural impact, okay? By the 11th century, Islam had been in the region for more than 500 years. The city gained a worldwide reputation as a city of the three faiths. But with the Fatimids in power, their empire fighting Christian expansionism, the rulers began to restrict the flow of Christian pilgrims. It was known as the city of three faiths, but the particular leadership at the time said, enough of these Christians coming to this city. So the Fatimid ruler was Al-Hakim. He destroyed the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was later rebuilt, of course, in response to an uprising, an act that contributed to the onslaught that came from the Crusaders. We did a show on the Crusaders. You got to check that out, okay? So in AD 1095, Pope Urban II preached for a crusade against Muslims in Palestine. Those who will fight, he said, are promised heavenly redemption for their sins and treasure for what they capture or conquer. And then it was on, okay? In AD 1099, Jerusalem was conquered by the Crusaders, and its inhabitants were basically slaughtered. Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike. We did a great show on the Crusades. You should really listen to it. It was a lot of killing, and know your history. It was a slaughter. It was not surgical attacking of religious enemies. Everybody in the city was considered an enemy, and they were killed, even if they were Christians. So know your facts. It was gross. It was awful. So much of the 12th century, it became the capital of the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem. That was pretty short-lived, because in AD 1187, under the leadership of Saladin, Muslims recaptured the city, and much to the relief of the Christian inhabitants, there was no revenge killing. So those who wanted to leave were permitted to do so with all their goods and all their belongings, and those who wanted to stay were guaranteed protection for their lives, property, and places of worship. But before he departed to reconquer Muslim lands, Salah al-Din appointed Daya al-Din Isa al-Hakari as governor and protector of the city. So under Malmuk, after the part of the Ottoman rule, which came afterwards, Jerusalem was heavily rebuilt, and it was really restored, especially by Suleiman II, also known as Suleiman the Magnificent, building walls, gates, towers, and aqueducts for the city. So under Islam rule, the leadership took very seriously, this is our home, and rebuilt the city with religious tolerance, which is documented, okay? By AD 1228, a sixth crusade landed on the shores of Palestine, and a year later, under treaty, the German Emperor Frederick II crowned himself as King of Jerusalem. 15 years later, it was retaken by an Egyptian army led by the Pasha, or the governor, Khwarazmi, and it was held by the Egyptians in the face of the Seventh Crusade until the 15th century, when it passed into the hands of the Ottoman Turks. Now, during the Ottoman rule, there was a small but pretty significant Jewish presence in Palestine. And by the 19th century, at the onset of the Ottoman collapse, Jerusalem had become a more open city, much more open city. Christian pilgrims increased, and churches, hospices, and other institutions were built. Okay, so there's this European Jewish immigration into Jerusalem. It was on the rise. It had been seen by some groups as very pivotal to kind of a master plan conceived by what are called Zionists. So these are people who believe in the development and protection of a Jewish nation in what is now Israel. Sometimes that term Zionist is attached with kind of an apocalyptic, when we have all returned, the world will end kind of thing. Sometimes the term Zionist is just attached to what I just described, which is kind of a European mindset that this is our home and we must return home. So I'm going to use it kind of loosely. You can decide politically what you think Zionist means, okay? By 1900, Jews made up the largest community in the city, and the expanded settlement outside the old city walls. Those are walls that were built by like David and Hadrian, okay? These are the old city walls. In 1914, the First World War led to a lot of turmoil and destruction and the need for expansion and conquest by a lot of European powers. So in 1917, Jerusalem was captured by British forces under General Edmund Allenby. The same year, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour signaled the British government's support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine to wealthy and influential Zionist. His name was Lord Rothschild. So now there became this kind of political endeavor funded by the Brits to say, yes, this is where Jews should live in the Holy Land. Okay, so after the war, Jerusalem was made the capital of Palestine, but it was held under British mandate, another British colony, think India, think parts of North Africa. As the end of the mandate neared, Arabs and Jews both sought to hold possession of the city, as you can imagine, but the minorities in the city, such as the Christians, favored a city that was open to all three religions, the city of three faiths, right? So this opinion was given a lot of weight by Europeans at the United Nations, which in partitioning Palestine into Arab and Jewish states, basically declared that Jerusalem would be an internationally administered city, but in a projected Arab state. Now, I know that sounds confusing. So even before the partition came into effect on May 14, 1948, there was a lot of fighting between Jews and Arabs. It broke out in the city on May 28th. The Jews in the old city surrendered, but the new city remained in Jewish hands. You can see where the wall is coming from now. So the old city and all the areas held by the Arab Legion, the quadrant marking East Jerusalem, were essentially annexed by the country of Jordan in April 1949. So the newly created state of Israel responded by retaining the area it held. And so on December 14th, 1949, the new city of Jerusalem was declared the capital of Israel, a super politically motivated goal that symbolized kind of Jewish history and power. So under continued UN resolutions disputing the status of the city, Israel later makes Tel Aviv its capital. I know it's getting confusing. There's just a ton of fighting going on. In 1967, Israeli forces took the old city in the Six-Day War with Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. They formally annexed the old city and placed all of Jerusalem under central administration. You can imagine this is ticking people off. Now, Arab East Jerusalemites were offered regular Israeli citizenship, but nearly all chose to maintain their status as Jordanians. So Israel then transferred a lot of Arabs out of the old city, literally get out, but assured access to the holy sites for Muslims and Christians. You need to understand what that means is it's literally, I've taken over the land that your home is on. This is no longer your home. So massive displacement. Okay, by July 1980, Israel's parliament approved a bill affirming Jerusalem as the country's historic and undivided capital for all Jews. But the position of successive Israel governments has it's been kept Tel Aviv as the capital city. It's what's recognized by the UN. So that might be some confusion for those of you that have kind of followed the news over the last 35 years. With suburbanization and housing developments in these kind of formerly Jordanian-held territories, Jerusalem has become Israel's largest city. It has only grown by a lot, but strife between Arabs and Jews has only escalated. It's just gotten worse. For example, Israeli excavation work around the city has destroyed a lot of items of Islamic art and architecture and altered a lot of the recognizable features of the old city. But it was the digging that was carried out near Al-Aqsa Mosque, the one that we mentioned before, and at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in 1970s that led to a lot of violence between Muslim and Jewish inhabitants. So in addition, this destruction of Arab buildings and then the confiscation of Arab land together with the changing of literally they're changing Islamic street and building names to Jewish ones. It's continued since 1967, really to kind of Judaize the city while simultaneously deporting its natives, depriving those who left from returning to their homeland. So homes have been taken away, and now the city has grown, and they're taking more homes away. So approximately, this is amazing, 15,500 Arabs have been deported and replaced since 1967, according to the UN, in order to increase the Jewish numbers in the city, right? That Zionist mission, okay? Now, consequently, Jewish inhabitants possess most of the estates and the land in the city. In 1918, the Jews used to possess only 4% of the land, Arabs 94%, and the minorities made up 2%. However, in 1985, the position had reversed with 84% ownership by the Jews, 14% by the Arabs, and about 1% for minorities. Christians would be a minority there, okay? Total flip. So the issue of status of East Jerusalem annexed by Israel, but regarded by Palestinians as part of their capital of their own state remains very, very difficult, okay? In 1998, Israel announced a pretty controversial plan to expand Jerusalem by annexing nearby towns. The plan was widely condemned by Arab countries and UN council members. Israel said it would freeze, and it has kind of frozen that plan. Since the start of the second Intifada of September 2000, Israel has routinely annexed access of local Arab towns to Jerusalem and basically sealing the city for its own design. So just kind of a quick updated timeline here. Here's what's up. In 2002, Israel Defense Forces besieged Palestinian militants in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem for 39 days. This would be an example of annexing nearby cities. You might remember that in the news. Also in 2002, Israel begins building 700-kilometer West Bank separation wall. That's where the wall came from, is like, stop coming and going. This isn't your land anymore. It's been reassigned. Get out. And remember, these were people's homes, thousands of years. Okay. In 2005, remains of early 3rd century church was found at Megiddo, and this caused a massive stir. Also in 2005, Israel withdraws settlers and military from Gaza. So they're kind of saying this Gaza Strip is yours, wall protecting us, regardless of your religious heritage. Here's your land, here's our land, and you can imagine which one is better or more fruitful for making a living on. In 2007, archaeologist Ehud Netzer, he discovers Herod the Great's long-lost tomb at Herodium. This is significant for both Christians and Jews. In 2008, responding to these rocket attacks, Israel launches a 22-day war against Gaza. You can see where it's escalating. In 2009, archaeologists in Nazareth uncovered residential buildings from the time of Jesus, stimulating even more interest from Christians. In 2012, UN General Assembly accepts Palestine as a non-member observer state. That was a big deal in 2012 because they're not given their own country, even though where Jerusalem was was their own country. It was called Palestine, which was then taken away by British Zionists and then funded after the war. I know it sounds confusing, but this is where the tension comes from. And now they're at least acknowledged at the table, okay? In 2013, City of David excavators find these clay seal inscribed with the name of Bethlehem, and it's the first reference to the city outside the Bible. Isn't that incredible? So Bethlehem was really only mentioned in scripture, but not known to historical records, but they found a tablet that did reference it. In 2014, there was a discovery of 9 previously unknown Dead Sea Scrolls. We should do a show on the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's so much cool stuff in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The tiny little texts were inside unopened like prayer cases. They're called tefillin, and they were found at Qumran in 1952. But these new ones were found in 2014. Unbelievable, totaling a ton, again, of the historical significance of the area. Also in 2014, responding to rocket fire once again, Israel launches 7-week bombardment of Gaza. 2017, there's a restoration of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the tomb of Christ. That's completed. So, oh my gosh, it's complicated, but it's beautiful. It's our roots. It's the Islamic roots. It's our Jewish brothers and sisters' roots. Hopefully you have a little bit better sense of the tension. And I say that because you should go to the Holy Land. You should visit the Holy Land and understand the shared nature. It should be a city of peace. And don't go with a chip on your shoulder and judgment. Recognize that many have been displaced. I mean, originally, way back when, Babylonian times, the Jews were displaced. But in more recent times, our Muslim brothers and sisters were displaced. And yes, there are extremists who promulgate violence. That's not our place as Christians, but it is a place for us to be unified. Some of my dear friends that have visited the Holy Land and spent time in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, including Eric, my boss at ODB, have just claimed the most extraordinary spiritual experiences. And I hope you do it. I hope you do it in your lifetime. Once again, if you're serious about wanting to make a Holy Land pilgrimage, listen, I've mentioned this before. I'm excited to tell you ODB Films partners with Pathfinders Pilgrimages. Tim Molnar, who is just incredible at Pathfinders, he will absolutely hook you up with an incredible spiritual journey for you and your parish community. Pathfinders is incredible. We don't just partner with anybody. They're an unbelievable company. Tim, T. Molnar, MULLNER at pathfinders.me. Check him out. Go out there, see the Holy Land in the spirit of pilgrimage, but also the spirit of peace. Thanks for listening. Sincerely. We're partners in the journey of faith. I hope you will share the Renovo podcast with friends and foes. Send your topic suggestions, questions, and or comments to doug@odbfilms.com. Always remember to engage the tradition and live the conversion. Until next time, God bless.